EDA meeting to order. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Blake Roberts,
Here.
Trudy Huntosh,
Here.
Sam Husnick,
Here.
Mark Finneman, Jennifer Lorge,
Here.
Leif Erikson,
Here.
and President Bain.
Here. I would invite everybody to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to shut off your camera before you do so, you can do so in the bottom left of your screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Members of the EDA, you have before you an agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
I move we approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Karen, could we have another roll call, please?
Blake Roberts,
Aye.
Judy Huntosh,
Aye.
Sam Husnick,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Leif Erikson,
Aye.
President Bain.
Aye. Agenda approved. Our first item on the agenda this evening is to approve the minutes from our regular EDA meeting, which was July 13th. Is there a motion to approve or any changes?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Karen, could we have another roll call vote, please?
Blake Roberts,
Aye.
Judy Huntosh,
Aye.
Sam Husnick,
Abstain.
Jennifer Lorge,
Aye.
Leif Erikson,
Aye.
President Bain.
Aye. Minutes approved. Our next item on the agenda this evening is the minutes from our first downtown committee workshop, which was July 27th. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I move we approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. And Karen, could we have another roll call vote, please?
Blake Roberts,
Abstain.
Judy Huntosh,
Aye.
Sam Husnick,
Aye.
Jennifer Lorge,
Aye.
Leif Erikson,
Aye.
President Bain.
Aye. Minutes approved. Next, moving on to our more substantive portion of the agenda. We have our first discussion item this evening is our 2021 budget. And Dan, are you walking us through this? And you're on mute.
Sorry about that. It's getting back to Zoom controls. I forgot about the mute button. So, President, members of the EDA, we're here to talk about the 2021 budget. Kind of had this broken down into two sections on the memo that was sent out. You kind of see, we'll start by just looking at the 2020 year to date, and then start out by looking at 2021 and kind of comparing items that were on the 2020 work plan to items that potentially could be on the 2021 year over year, and then solicit feedback to make sure that's in alignment with where the EDA wants to go in 2021. I did send out earlier today the year-to-date figures on the EDA budget, so everybody should have gotten those emailed out earlier. But I'll also throw them up on the screen here just to make sure everybody can see the figures that I'm referencing here. Can everybody see the year-to-dates on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
So what you see here, this is just basically the budget numbers for the EDA broken down. In the left column numbers is 2019. So that's the activity that we did in 2019. You have the 2020 original budget numbers, and then the 2020 activity. This one says through 12/31 of 20. I believe this is actually through August, beginning of August. That date just needs to be updated. It's the new software that we're working on. So there's a couple of bugs in just some of the reporting, but that is actually through August. That's there. One thing that you'll see here in the 2020 activity is that we have spent about half of the budget to date. However, a lot of what's been spent on the engineering charges is going to be reimbursed through the downtown or through the Washington County grant that we got for downtown planning. A lot of those charges are relating to the downtown sewer study. So a lot of those monies will be coming back in terms of a grant reimbursement once they get those submitted over to Washington County. I think kind of the key thing on the activity to date here is to note that I think part of the reasons why our expenses are so low is the significant impact of COVID. A lot of the activities that we would have been engaged in April, May, June were placed on hold due to the fact that we kind of had to retool and pivot a little bit during those months based on COVID impact. So these numbers are going to be, what you're seeing here are going to be a little bit lower than what they normally would be in a normal year. A couple other expenses that are coming down the pipeline is that we do have the downtown planning study that's going to be coming up hopefully later in 20. That may spill over into 21, but those expenses are going to be coming down the pipeline. That being said, we also have some additional revenues coming in with the grant reimbursements. That total grant, what we got through Washington County was for up to $40,000 for reimbursement. So when those expenses come in, it's a one-to-one match. So if we have say a $50,000 planning study that we do for downtown, we'll expend $25,000. We'll get reimbursed for the other $25,000. We just want the EDA to know that we do have some of those larger expenses coming in, anticipating late in 2020. But I just kind of wanted to share this with the EDA to give you guys an idea of where we are to date with the current 2020 budget. Any questions on these numbers right here as they're presented?
If you had, I know we're running later than we expected in the timing of these expenses, but if you were to take a stab at where we were going to end the year, do you think we're coming in close to the 50, or do we still have a fairly sizable margin unspent in 2020?
If I had to project out where we are right now, I would say by the time all the revenues come back in and offset those expenses, there's going to be a little bit left over. There's going to be probably, rough guess, 10 to 15,000 that's there. Some of these numbers in here, so if you look at publishing and ads at 7,000, a lot of that was related to trade show, which is based on hold right now. However, the conversation has been to repivot those monies and reallocate those to the chamber expenses. So there's an offset there. The contract services is the one that we are going to come in lower on. That's where those new tracks expenses are currently sitting. And right now that service is on hold due to COVID. So those numbers are going to come in lower this year. The miscellaneous one, this is the wild card one, just because I don't really know what the total number of abatements we're going to get this year. I'm anticipating not seeing a big rush of them, but you never really do know. It depends on what projects take place downtown between now and the end of the year. So if I had to take out a crystal ball and predict where we're going to be at the end of the year, I think we're going to come in under budget. And that brings up the point here where you see highlighted over here, the EDA fund balance. We currently have a fund balance of 192,996. That was based on the end of 19. Year over year, that balance went up, I think, approximately 30,000. If I look back at where we were this time last year, the fund balance was right around 160. So we are seeing that fund balance start to grow. So if we do have in 2021 the opportunity for some additional projects to come online, we do have fund balance that could take care of those one-time expenses moving forward.
That makes
Any other questions on kind of the year to date? I'll stop the screen share here just for 1 second. So in the packet on page 10 is where I went over the 2021 budget discussion and kind of teed this up in a chart where I compared the 2020 expenses and then the 2021 estimated. These were, in essence, what I did here was took a lot of the work that was in 2020 that was sort of on hold and just kind of slotted that into 2021. And this is where the discussion at the EDA level is, do we want to continue with these programs in 21? Do we want to kind of shift? Do we want to pivot, add something, take something away? Does this encapsulate what you guys want to try to accomplish in 2021? Or is there something else you want to see added to this list? I will also just do a quick screen share here so everybody has this information in front of them as well. So here again is that year-over-year comparison. One big piece of this puzzle that's not going to be in 2021 is that we did complete the downtown infrastructure study, so that's not going to be here. So what I did when I looked at 2021 and prepared this estimate, I did increase the downtown committee's, earmark up to 20,000, just given the fact that with that committee up and running, I would anticipate some expenses coming out of the downtown committee in 21. I also moved the marketing materials line item from a separate line item and just combined it down in the trade show marketing collateral since it seemed to be a better fit down there. When you do look year over year, you're seeing these totals are fairly close. I try to keep them as close as possible when I went year over year. But again, the kind of the decision points here, does this kind of encapsulate what the EDA wants to do in 21? Or is there something else you guys want to see added to this list as we start to look at really getting those numbers for 2021 fine-tuned?
I guess, so one of the things that comes to mind is making sure that the downtown committee is going to be equipped with what additional studies we might anticipate coming out of the next couple of months worth of work that we might want to slot into 2021. I guess maybe my question is to Ryan on, with the specific to the downtown group, with the studies that have been done, helping to look around the corner on what might be next. I know parking comes to mind. And there's a host of other studies that we may want to fund. I don't know if you have some specific guidance on what should be slotted for 2021. I'm not exactly sure what a parking study looks like, but I think some funding set aside with an estimate would make sense. And I'm open to other suggestions as well from the group. That maybe we would start though specifically around additional funding that might be required from the downtown group.
I'll just add that the downtown sewer study, the actual study itself has been done for some time now to have a viable option to deal with the bottlenecks in the future on the south end of the system. We've spent a number of field trips getting real invert elevations to avoid having to do the simple solution, which was to drop in a lift station and then force main it over to where we got gravity. So through all that field work, we were able to find a line that could allow us for gravity in the future. So that's what slowed that up. Actually, as we were just talking here, the draft final report was just emailed to me, taking into account for all that stuff. So we've already discussed this study with city staff, so they knew what we were exploring. Public Works was just adamant about not adding another lift station, and thus then we needed to do field work based on some of the record plan data is from the 60s and 70s. So just different datums and equipment between then and now, and so we just want to make sure what we were going to show as a solution in the future was actually something that could be accomplished.
Help me translate that into, are you suggesting that there is additional work 2021 to be done specifically to sewer, or are you thinking that we're going to
The sanitary
land in a
sewer
good
study
place?
is done.
Okay.
So
Okay.
based on the current zoning that's been changed, which significantly increased your guys' density
Mhm.
and land use, you know, until we get to the later end of development, our bottleneck is really down. You know, I can't think of the roads right now, but it's in the south end of it where we'd be able to run gravity parallel with 61. But that's something that, I mean, we're talking 30, 40 years probably down the road when we'd even consider that capacity issue and or in conjunction with the MnDOT 61 reconstruct project.
Mhm.
So that's why we wanted to nail down an alternate route, or a route that would be, you know, utilized in the future. So MnDOT decides in 15 years to reconstruct 61, that's when the city should start trying to allocate funding towards something like that. So that'll be all done this year. The other thing that we've started that is going to directly relate back to development is the downtown stormwater study to talk about regional stormwater stuff like that. So some of that field work is going to start going here, and that's just really in the beginning works of that study, as the watershed just recently approved a joint agreement which is sharing some funding towards that study. So that's in progress too. The water study, we're not concerned. We, you know, have a relatively decent water study that was, you know, completed in 14, 15. Every 10 years, we got to go through some other water stuff through the Minnesota Department of Health. So that's, you know we got the capacity there. So that really takes care of your utilities. Now it's your user and functionality of what you guys want to be looking at or services being provided.
Your thoughts on the timing for a parking study? 2021, hold it for a future time frame. I always have a chicken and egg question on, do you do the parking study first, or do you let the development ideas come to the table and then do a parking study? Do you have any guidance?
Now, with the current conditions that are going on, a parking study, you're not going to find accurate results to what was happening 2-3 years ago. Even on a lot of these big transportation projects, we're not getting the traffic that's, you know, previously been recorded. So what do we design to, or what do we forecast to? So I think that's kind of jumping the gun right now. I mean, obviously we know there needs to be parking, but it's going to have to be a joint venture between a redevelopment of something that's going to have something tucked underneath versus where are you going to put more parking? You know, all the city lands accounted for parking. The land you want and want to get a hold of is on private property. So I guess what I would suggest to you guys to do is grab a hold of the agreements that White Bear Lake just did with that facility there down there in their downtown, to see how they came to a joint partnership that led to the public parking with the private use, and get familiar with that stuff. So when those opportunities do come forward, you're able to talk with the developer about those, but then also have something to kind of provide some framework in your discussions with those developers. We know where the perfect spot is to have parking with a redevelopment, you know, across on the west side of 61, when you got that old parking lot now, and you got some buildings that probably could use a refacing, or, you know, consumed into the new building. So, and then there's some open space south of Broadway that, you know, has potential, and then, you know, there's some other stuff that's being talked about. I don't know how far public some of that is, so I'll just stop there. But I mean, there's things that are rolling down there. It's just people are really scared to pull the trigger right now. So are some banks.
Right. That's helpful feedback. Thank you. So I jumped right into studies and jumped right into parking specific to downtown. I guess I'd ask the question to the broader group around specific to funding for the downtown committee. What else is on your mind, and what else might we want to reserve some funding for?
Can I ask a question? This is more to the bigger budget of the city in general. Do we have some projections, or what staff is recommending for an increase, or what it's going to be at for this year as a whole?
Yeah, no, we don't yet. We're finalizing the budget, hopefully by the end of this week, because our first budget session is Monday. So we're getting close, but we don't have a number I can give you yet. Probably on Monday, we'll give you an estimate on what that's going to be.
Oh, okay, so with that said, I mean, if we have that 192,000, that's nice to have for if something does pop up. I think what Dan's proposing here seems to make a lot of sense, a really good number in my opinion.
That's good feedback.
I've got a question. If the downtown committee comes up with a need for funding for a special project, is it a matter of just going to the EDA and moving it out of our funds and approving a special project? So we don't have to identify it now because we don't know what we need and what we need it for? But we can.
Yeah, I think if you have new projects or a need that, since you have a fund balance, you would just go back to the EDA and then the council to shift those funds and to earmark those funds for whatever that's going to be.
Out and use fund balance would be our option since I think if there are things that we know now, certainly let's get them earmarked and dedicated, and then otherwise your option is fund balance if it's not dedicated as part of the 2021 budget.
And one thing just to bring forward too on here is like a couple of these items, such as a trade show and marketing collateral. If trade shows don't come back online in 21, there's 5,000 that can go somewhere else too. I mean, that's what happened in 20 is that with trade shows being sort of put on hold for all of 20, the need to get trade show materials and, a trade show booth done in 20 kind of took a back burner seat. But if we look at 21, and obviously it's a long way out, but if it's still predicting that trade shows aren't coming back online, those funds could get reallocated for something else as well. So, I mean, there's some movement within these estimates that, if we see a big need on the downtown committee, there's stuff that within the current 21 estimates that could get shifted around as well.
I know through some of our downtown committee conversations, whether it was, part of the official launch or some of the pre-work we had done, it seems to me there was some low-hanging fruit that was identified of things that could get accomplished or things that should be addressed, like lack of bike racks in the downtown area. We've heard a couple of times how people drive by Forest Lake and they don't realize that, Forest Lake is a little bit off the interstate. Is there some things, like signage out there or bike racks that we should potentially put in the budget to just address and start making some headway on some things?
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, you're right. There has been identified some low-hanging fruit, and I think right now, within the absence of not having the committee really get behind and really develop, kind of what that first work plan was, which is unfortunate. Had we started in March, I think this downtown number would have been a lot more locked in than we just started this, a couple of weeks ago. So some of those items are still going to be up for discussion and, kind of figure out what does rise to the top there, which is why I try to increase the amount by something I thought would be relative to what would actually be spent in 21 without actually just throwing a total pie in the sky number in there. But if we get a lot of movement behind the downtown study, and we can definitely shift that number or, reallocate stuff as we move forward, or if we find a great study or a great one-time expense, we need to dip into fund balance, we can do that as well to cover 21. So I think to your point, Leif, about, can we bring on some of that low-hanging fruit? I think that 20,000 can definitely be used for that as well. It's not just state study money right now. It's going to be kind of whatever comes out of that downtown group as we start to develop that work plan and start to get some momentum behind projects in that group.
I moved the conversation quickly to the downtown committee. Maybe let's step back in broader EDA. Other thoughts, other things we should be considering for 2021 besides downtown items? It's a small item on the budget, but I think it's worth additionally some discussion. Are we still budgeting new tracks out of EDA?
It is, yep, correct. It comes out of the contract services, so it's right around $19,000 a year comes out for new tracks.
And that program's currently on hold, right?
Yeah, I believe they put it on hold in March, end of March. We haven't seen a bill from them. So they have not been running it due to COVID. So we're not actively in the market right now with new tracks.
Okay. I know it's not a huge dollar item, but I would advocate that we at some point consider moving it to council budget instead of EDA. It has, in my opinion, marginal EDA impact. It's more of a service we're providing than for reasons other than economic development. But it's not huge dollars, and so I don't mind that. It's not a huge deal if it's 2021. But at some point, I think that should kind of get redirected into council somewhere or into the general fund somewhere else.
Can I go back to the overall budget of the city again quickly? I just, with everything going on and how commercial property is going to be affected by this, if we're talking about economic development and retention of other businesses, based on what that city number is going to be, and we have 192 sitting in reserve, maybe this budget needs to be way less. I think this tax impact needs to be citywide. There needs to be probably some cuts for survival for some of these businesses. And until I know that number, it's tough to really make a hard decision on whether or not this is good or not. I wouldn't go any higher than this, but maybe there's some opportunity to lower it just to help the impact on businesses and of course residential too. But I just think, who knows where this is? We don't know where this is going to go. This coming into winter here, this thing could come back and just be a complete nightmare for all the businesses like it was back in March and April.
Agree. I think that's prudent, and I also appreciate your perspective on keeping an eye on the overall city budget. This is first pass, and so certainly wanted to get some input from EDA, make sure that we are well equipped for what we want to do in 2021, but certainly need to take the broader city perspective as well. That's good feedback.
Mara, if you don't mind.
Sam, absolutely. Go ahead.
Does the CARES Act have any influence on what we're trying to do here? I mean, we did collect some CARES money, and so can that be figured into any of these equations with the EDA and all that? I guess that's a question for Patrick more than anyone.
Yeah, no, the CARES money for 2021 will not be available because we did get CARES money, but we have to have it spent by November 1st. So
okay.
Unless there's, we're still working on what we can spend it on, what kind of programs we have, but for 2021, it'll be unavailable unless the Congress does something different.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thanks.
Any other thoughts related to 2021 budget? Certainly there's an opportunity for EDA to revisit these numbers as we see the broader city budget in the next couple of weeks. We need to have a preliminary levy finalized in September. And as most of you know, we can't go over that preliminary number in September, but we can certainly bring that number down between September and when we actually approve the budget in December. So now's the time for us to make sure we've got all of our wishes identified, and so that they can get included and also incorporated in the overall impact of the overall city budget. All right, Dan, anything else you would like feedback on this topic?
No, I think that kind of, gives me enough to go on and really start to put those numbers together. So I'm good.
Okay. Anyone else before we move on? All right. Next conversation for this evening is another round of update and conversation on the BR&E. To Blake's point previously, this could be a very important program as we roll it out here in the fourth quarter, and certainly planning into 2021. Dan, do you want to take us through the next steps of that conversation?
Yep. President, members of the EDA, here just to kind of give you the next level of conversation on the BR&E program. Kind of want to go over the outline tonight of what the actual program will look like. Review the goals. I did go back, took the feedback from the last meeting and drafted some goals, go over the outline, like I said, and then kind of the main discussion point tonight is to start to assemble the list of businesses that we want to make sure that we get included in the visit list. So just to, we don't need to get all of them, but just to start to get the ones that we want to make sure that we get out and visit as part of our survey work. So if you go to page, it's on page 24 of your packet. I did, and I'll pull this up on the screen here as well, just for people on the packet readily available. I did take the feedback from the last meeting where I had, I think it was 5 or 6 goals initially sort of drafted, or, you know, they weren't very well wordsmithed at the last go around, but had 5 goals, brought to the EDA, got some feedback, and the feedback was we could combine a bunch of those goals together. Recommendation was to establish 3 goals for the program. So I did take that back and kind of combined what I could combine and did a little bit more wordsmithing to them and came up with these 3 draft goals here. I'm just looking for feedback on these to make sure that these are on alignment with how the EDA views the program, the BR&E program. So the first goal is to demonstrate support for local businesses and assist them with the challenges brought on due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The reason why I included COVID-19 there is I want to make sure that when we go forward with this, that we are consciously trying to capture what the impact is in this study, since that's one of the main reasons why we are doing this. We are doing the retention focused. So I wanted to encapsulate that within one of the goals. The second goal, to proactively establish communication channels between the City of Forest Lake, the Forest Lake Chamber of Commerce, and local businesses in an effort to educate businesses on local assistance programs. And then the third goal is to gather data to better assess factors influencing the community's economic conditions and use that data to guide future policy development. So those are the 3 that I kind of brought back together to start with to establish a goal set for the BR&E program. And right now I'd like to stop just to make sure and get some feedback to make sure these are in alignment with what the EDA was kind of thinking that the goals of the program should be.
I'm on mute. Any feedback? I know we had previous conversation on this topic and had given Dan some edits. Has he captured our intent? Any other feedback items? Dan, looks good from my perspective. I think you've captured our feedback that we had.
But if anybody kind of after this realizes that, you know, they don't like the way something was worded, you know, feel free to reach out between now and September. You know, we can make some drafts on there, but it sounds like these are in alignment with where the EDA wanted to go. So I'll use these as I start to draft out the program documents. What you see in your packet is sort of the overview of the BR&E program. And what I did here is this will become part of the program file. So when we look back at this down the road and say 5 years, we can actually kind of look at, try to capture why we started the program, who sponsored it, business selection. This is more just that kind of time capsule moment. So when we look at this outside of the kind of contemporary issues that we're facing, we can kind of get an idea of why the program was made and why we went forward and did a retention program. But part of that in this outline is I kind of go through and lay out some of like what are the kind of the key calendar dates that we're trying to hit on the work plan. And I do have those summarized in the memo. So this is all based on a program approval at the September 14th meeting. We are still tracking for that approval data. Everything at this point is looking like I'll be able to get everything together for an approval on September 14th. Assuming that we're able to get it approved on the 14th, I have our survey starting the following week, just to get the survey questions distributed, get everybody up to speed. They can obviously start earlier than that. They can start on the 15th if people want to start on the 15th, but I kind of gave some time in there to allow people just to get familiar with kind of the process. So I have the 24th through November 30th as being the survey dates. So those are the time periods. We'll be out doing the business surveys. I set a number, the target number for businesses within the survey to be 60. Just for reference, the last time in 2011, they started to target with 75. So we're similar to the numbers that we used back in 2011. We did a bigger group. I kind of took 60 as a realistic number, realizing that, you know, with the current numbers of EDA members that we have, and kind of realizing everybody's busy, time constraints, setting it up where with the 7-member panel and assistant with the Chamber of Commerce, that basically boils down to 2 surveys per month per EDA member. So one every other week. So I think that's a pretty realistic cadence in terms of getting the surveys out and performed by the EDA members. So that gives us 2.5 months. So we finish off surveying on November 30th. Again, trying to hit that total target of 60. Between October 12th and November 9th, I have warning flag review sessions scheduled. These are sessions where during the course of surveying, if you see a business that has a sign, like a warning sign that it's either going to be out of business, it's facing a pretty significant challenge, we'll have time dedicated on the agenda to at least discuss that, to see if there's anything that we can do from a government perspective to assist that business out, whether it be giving them resources or, you know, offering some type of assistance. So we do have 2 of those baked in before we do the final reporting and data analysis. So these kind of catch those major issues as they come in versus having to wait for them to get rolled into the report back in 2021. So October 12th and November 9th, we'll have a warning flag review sessions. Again, we'll do those. If we do identify a business, we're not going to let everybody know what businesses it is. We'll just talk about them and we'll maintain confidentiality. But we'll have a discussion. If there are any warning flags, know there are opportunities to have those discussions during those meetings. The survey data analysis and report drafting will take place in December. So we'll get the final surveys done at the end of November. That data will come back. I'll start to roll up that data and start doing the data analysis and draft the report in December of 2020. The goal would be then to release the report back to the EDA in the first quarter of 21. That reporting back could be kind of dependent on what meeting that's going to hit. It's going to be depending upon how quickly I can get through the data analysis portion of it. But I'm leaning towards probably in January or February. I think I can turn the report around relatively quickly. Looking at the kind of the smaller survey set that we're doing, it shouldn't take that long to go through into the data analysis portion of it. So you'll have the report back in the first quarter of 21. So that's just some of the draft outline of the kind of the key calendar dates we're going to hit here with the BRD program once it's up and running. But the main discussion point for tonight is to talk about the business selection. So what I'm looking for here, if there's any businesses at the EDA, we want to make sure that we encapsulate, that we hit, that we have included in this survey. Now it's time to make sure that we get those on the list. And to kind of at least help guide that conversation, I did pull a 2011 list and put it in the memo. I'm fully cognizant of the fact that some of the businesses that are on this 2011 list are no longer here, have moved, but kind of wanted to see what, wanted to show an example of what that survey looked like back in 2011. So I can put that up on the screen now and then start collecting feedback on what we're looking at for businesses that we want to make sure that we survey as we go out and start doing these business surveys.
Hey, Dan, before we dive into this business list, can we talk a little bit more about what the plan is for the warning sign, the red flag? What did you call it? Did you call it the red flag sessions?
Warning flag sessions is what they're, the warning flag review sessions.
So I guess what's on my mind is how do we facilitate that so that we are maintaining a level of confidentiality of the information that's gathered during this process, but also provide some level of assistance? Is this where you, like, staff and chamber work together, synthesize the information, then decide what comes back to the EDA as a public facing and around programming recommendations? And is it at a fairly condensed high level? How do we Or is there some level of like release that's signed from the business that's we're going to be talking about? How do we make sure that we're providing assistance, but also some level of confidentiality to the extent that we're a public body and have all of those considerations?
I mean, I think the idea would be to, bring back a synthesized information where we don't actually speak in, you wouldn't want to identify what it is unless that business wants to be identified and saying we need help.
Right.
These are
Right.
typically in here just in, as a way to kind of have those conversations before, because if some businesses, they may not be able, if they are truly in a warning flag situation, they may not have cash flow to make it through until 21 when a program could come online. So these are sort
Right.
of kind of those stop gaps to allow the conversation to happen more in real time than they are, then let's take everything back, see it in total picture. So they'll be brought forward if we do see one and we do have the need to have, a deep conversation during these warning flags. They'll be presented in a way where we do maintain that confidentiality in the public setting. We won't have any, there won't be any, we'll make sure it's a position where there's no possibility of that name slipping out. We'll make sure that they're protected, the confidentiality is maintained during those discussions, because you're right, that conversation be happening at the EDA is going to happen in the public meeting. So we'll just have to we'll have to synthesize that up in a way where it's not just easily identifying the business that we surveyed.
Some of that, and also to your point, is some of the activities of the EDA and the activities of the BRE program is going to be a longer duration, right? And may not even be of much assistance to somebody who's in an emergency situation. So to that regard, to the extent that we are just referring to other services, for example, if the Open to Business program can be helpful in perhaps providing some guidance and renegotiating a rent or a lease, for example. Does that kind of happen outside of the purview of the program, where I'm just trying to picture what we're bringing forward in those sessions where we're able to provide some meaningful assistance other than, gosh, we're really sorry this is happening to you. We'll have a program online in 9 months to help. I'm just trying to balance the practical
I think
considerations.
if we do see something where that could be definitely slotted in with Open to Business or there's an existing program, we'll try to take care of that offline. We'll try to address those issues I think where these come in, if we're seeing, the need to maybe do a quick policy adjustment, or something to that effect, we can have that conversation at the EDA. But if it's individual and where there's already resources that are out there that we can slot them over to, that's a better fit, we'll make sure that they have those resources available to them.
Anyone else have any thoughts or concerns on that?
No, but that's a really good point, the confidentiality.
Right. All right, Dan, I interrupted your flow. I think you were going to pull up a business list.
No problem. So this is just to kind of reference everybody here. This is the list that we used back in 2011. So again, here we targeted 75 originally. 36 agreed to be surveyed. Now that's 60 that we're targeting. Realistically, we're probably not going to get all 60 to agree to be surveyed. But out of the 75 that we did back in 2011, 36 agreed to. Now in 2011, however, it was a much more detailed survey, a lot more time consuming. I think our benefit here is that we're going to kind of do more of a quick hit survey. So I think the time commitment is going to be less. I'm hopeful that the businesses that agree to be surveyed will be higher, just because of the fact it's not going to be as time consuming. But again, what I'm looking for here is just to make sure that I encapsulate that when we start putting these business visit lists together, that I have all the businesses that the EDA want to visit included in that list. So here, these are the lists that we had back in 2011. I won't read them all. Just kind of throw them on the screen for people to kind of digest and read through. There's the first 8. I'll just give it a minute, and then I'll go to the next slide, which has the remaining 28 on them.
something that just stands out to me is, and maybe we sent the invites and it was declined. I would like to see more professional services or services in general. So I think, you know, realty, law firm. I think we're light in that sector is just my initial reaction of looking up. Even, you know, we've got TCF Bank, but we don't have any of the other financial institutions. So either investment planning, some of the more I don't think we've got any of the kind of regional or, well, we've got Patriot Bank on here.
Mara?
Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at the list there too, and I'm thinking that, you know, with this virus thing going around, that we should be targeting businesses that weren't deemed essential necessarily, because they're the ones that are going to be really hurting. And if
That's
there's
good
anything,
feedback.
I think we should maybe focus some of our efforts toward that.
Maybe Walmart's doing okay. Is that your feedback?
Exactly.
If I could put words in your mouth, yeah, that would be my feedback. Yeah.
Yep. And you know, the liquor stores are doing okay and that kind of thing too. You know?
Yeah, they are.
But it would be nice to really see if there's anything that we can do for those folks by, and of course that survey is going to help us with that. So.
Right. I with that eye in mind, I would also, well, I was going to say a focus on more local or independently owned restaurants. So I see Famous Dave's on the list, and maybe, I don't know if that is a local franchisee. I'm open to having a local franchisee, but to the extent that that's a corporate store, I would prefer to stay away from corporate owned stores and focus on locals.
I was going to say focus on or make a priority those newest businesses that have opened, you know, in the last 3 to 5 years.
That's good feedback too.
Yeah.
We don't have any, so think about businesses whose feedback just represents kind of the pulse of the community because of the interactions they're having. So I think about some of the insurance agents we have in town. They're, you know, certainly they have their own business feedback, but certainly they also are great just conduits of feedback of how is the community doing overall. The realtors would have similar types of feedback.
And the investment bankers, the investment
Yep.
institutions.
Yeah, bookkeepers. I mean, there's a few of those in town. The accountants, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Nan from the chamber would have good input here too. She's really on the pulse of the majority of the businesses in the chamber.
Agree.
Another sector I thought of too as the list was going was employment services, adding like a like the employment side to see what if they're hiring temporary, or get a kind of a pulse on the hiring side of it as well.
Yep. Any other segments that we see are missing, or business types that we think we should target, or obvious, just specific businesses that should be on the list that aren't? I think my feedback is more on the segment level than it is individual, knowing that we're going to pick and not everyone's going to choose to participate.
The sector level conversation was helpful, at least making sure that we, grab businesses from all the different sectors. So that is helpful. What I'll do is I'll try to go through and find representative businesses from within each of these, and that'll be the basis for the list. I'll get brought forward in September, and we'll get them assigned out to the EDA members at the September meeting.
Dan, was there more you wanted us to consider tonight for the BRNE?
That was, at this point, that was kind of the last segment that I needed.
Okay.
So next steps, I'll take all of this up, the last 3 meetings, condense it all down into one overall report. I'll get the questions drafted. I'll have the process for, surveying. Again, granted the fact that it's looking like we're still going to be in a COVID influenced survey environment in September, October. I'll look at, getting a remote meeting room set up so, EDA members can use Zoom meetings if you need to do it that way, phone or in person. Get that all packaged up, get the agreement with the chamber ready to go for September, bring the whole thing back as one package, one final look at the whole thing in September, and then it's off to the races. So we're tracking exactly where we need to be to get this thing launched in September.
That's great. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Nanette from the chamber. All right, with that done, we do not have Chris Hagen from Washington County update this evening.
I have an update from him.
I'm glad you do. I was just going to ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I spoke with Chris earlier today and I asked him if he had any, he told me he wasn't going to be able to be in the meeting tonight, and I asked him if he had any update that he had for the group. He wanted me to mention that Washington County's CARES Act Small Business Relief Fund application went live today. And he wanted me to share that link out with the group. So I just put it in the chat feature. I'll also email it out to the group. This is the Small Business COVID Relief Grant application. They're going to be accepting applications from businesses within Washington County now through, I believe it's August 24th is when it closes. And these are grants that'll be distributed out to businesses within Washington County up to $15,000 for businesses with at least one full-time employee. And then I believe it's $7,500 for sole proprietorships. So they have the criteria is all listed here for who's eligible, and what the application, what they need for applications material is all included in this on the link that was sent out here. But basically, they're working this through Open to Business. They're actually administering the grant process for Washington County, and they're trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. So their criteria basically is you were impacted by COVID-19. One of the questions was asked, what does that look like? And Tyler made the point. He goes, if you were a business that was shut down due to the governor's executive orders, you have an impact that you qualify for. If you were open, if you were able to maintain, you stayed open, what he was saying is submit a year-over-year, month-to-month comparison. So take your revenues from March of 19, compare those to the March of 20. And if you can show a loss, then you would qualify for a grant program. The grant funds can be used for, I believe it's mortgage payments, rent payments, improvements to the building for social distancing, any type of safety material that you had to purchase, masks, all that type of stuff is reimbursable through this grant program. Specific questions though, Tyler from Washington County or from Open to Business is the point person on this one. He's happy to walk any business through this. Again, they are trying to make this as user-friendly as possible. And these funds are going to be first come, first serve. So get this out to as many businesses as you know. I will get the link on the city's website as well, so local businesses can see this as well. But this application is live today, so Chris wanted me to make sure I shared that with the group. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this program. I won't be able to answer much on behalf of Chris, but just about this program, I can maybe take a stab at it.
Any questions for Dan on the program? Not seeing any. Our next item on our agenda. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, Dan, do you know if a business receives a PPP loan, is that take them out of the opportunity to get this grant? Do you know?
I don't believe it does. I believe, just looking up, there's some, I believe.
I don't think it does. I don't think it does, Dan, because the payroll was not part of this grant.
Correct. I think if you used funds, you can't double dip, so you can't double pay the same expenses with the same programs. So if you use PPP for payroll, this could be used for other expenses such as safely reopening a business. Those expenses will qualify in this program.
Great, thanks.
All right, next item on our agenda this evening is Nan at the chamber update. Welcome, glad you're here.
Thank you. Two things that I thought I'd run through. Thank you for the opportunity to see your faces. First of all, the CARES Act, that's been huge. We've been communicating with our members about this for probably 3 weeks now, letting them know, giving them the information so that they could have all their ducks in a row prior to today, because it did go release. So that's been a primary thing. Obviously, you know that's important to our business owners. Not only did I hear today on our Zoom meeting, but I've heard this just kind of all the last weeks, is just the impact of school and the uncertainty of school and what that's going to do to business owners. And so it was interesting. Dr. Massey actually came on the Zoom meeting today. And so it was incredible. And it's just quite honestly, everybody is in that situation, because if most people are not only business owners or employees or working somewhere, but it was good to hear the decision making process on the school. He did share with us some of the other schools and what they're intending to do as well. And so it's like everything else, we just have more, we're just very sure that there's more uncertainty. And so but it was good to hear from our school leaders. We did talk a lot about mental health as well, and the fact that mental health services are huge, that we have opportunities. We actually had 2 different mental health professionals on our Zoom meeting today. And so that's always a great reminder. I love that. And then the school utilizing their resources too. So providing resources not only for teachers and parents, but for the kids themselves. So I think we're going to continue to see that be a banner waved over the course of the next month. Let's see, next I have the mandatory mask. I believe it seems, for me, being out and about and listening to the business sector, whether they like it or not, everybody's pretty much sucked it up. They put their masks on and go about their life. And so I don't really see an issue anywhere on that. I think initially maybe over those, fortunately for me, I was kind of checked out from surgery when it first hit. And so I didn't hear too much complaining about it. And then mass distribution, we moved quickly. We were, the first area chamber was given 20 masks to distribute. And thanks to Blake, I called him on a dime and said, hey, can I set up camp outside your store? And he said, yes. And so we distributed over 10,000 masks in just probably in 5 hours over the course of 2 days. I take a break from it just to get some new dates. I'll set some new dates this week and start to promote that again, so that we do a second round of distribution, because we have about 10, just shy of 10,000 left. But again, I want to give a little bit more promotional time for the next time, so that those that did not take part can get the masks. There was fantastic. It was a really opportunity, and there were chamber members and non. So it's not just chamber members. People, it was just really nice to have conversations with folks and hear what they're doing, and really a lot of graciousness on the behalf of the businesses. And then my last report is where I'm spending all my waking hours now is golf. Our big golf event is next Monday. And I think of as just shy before this meeting, I got our last team of golfers as far as golf. And met with a golf course again to go through all of the stipulations of what we can do and not do, and make sure we're compliant out at the golf course. So all that looks great. So things are looking good. We have it actually, when you're at the golf course, it almost feels, dare I say, normal. Forward to a day of normalcy on the golf course. If anybody wants to come hang out at the golf course, I'd love that. We do, again, because of COVID, their gift is a mask, because if they go into the clubhouse, they have to have a mask, mandatory, no questions asked, and hand sanitizer. So not our normal golf gifts by any stretch of the imagination, but everybody's got a great attitude, and overall, I think we're in line for a really good event, different but better, right? So that's the primary things front and center in my mind. So that's it.
That's great. Thank you for the update. Any questions for Nan this evening? All right. We are at the end of our planned agenda for this evening. Just a quick reminder that our next EDA meeting, which is 2 weeks from tonight on August 24th, we have the second meeting of the downtown group. And so if you have those in your network that were unable to join us for our kickoff, I'm happy to include them in this next meeting, and we will have an agenda set for that middle of next week. We'll get that distributed out to everybody. So just a reminder, and that will be our recurring time. It will be that fourth Monday at 5:30. And so we will be down to one EDA meeting a month, and then the downtown committee taking up that second planned EDA meeting of the month. Anything else to come before us this evening before we adjourn? Dan, you will send, you said you're going to set I see you sent the link to the Washington County application. You're also going to put that on the city's website, right?
Correct. I'll get on the city's website, and I also will email the link out to all the EDA members, so you'll have it in your email as well.
Perfect. And I know the chamber's done some nice promotion of that as well. So, okay, good. Want to make sure we're getting that out there.
Can I make mention of one additional item?
You sure can.
Another thing that they talked about from Washington County is there are grant monies available for mortgage relief and renters relief as well. As you're working, if they're in hardship, I think it's important that we get that message out as well.
Agree. Good. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not having anything else before us, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a second from Leif. And Karen, could we have a roll call?
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Huntash,
I think she dropped.
Commissioner, Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorge,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson, President Bain.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.